In the heart of the Roman Empire, where glories are built upon the wreckage of nations and legends are forged by the edge of a sword and the blood of men, there emerged a man whose footsteps penned unforgettable lines in the history of Rome. A man who combined the brilliance of a leader, the charm of charisma, and the strength of a soldier. This man was Mark Antony, one of the greatest military and political leaders in the history of the empire, who ultimately fell victim to love, the game of betrayal, and the struggle for thrones. Mark Antony was born into a prestigious family with deep roots in politics and the military, and he was raised on the principles of honor and strength in an era that had no place for weakness. From his youth, the traits of a mighty knight were evident in him: bold in battle, fiercely loyal, unafraid of death, and unwavering in his decision-making. His true journey began when he gravitated toward Julius Caesar, the most powerful man in Rome at the time. Mark Antony transformed from a mere ambitious officer into one of the pillars of Caesar's power. He fought alongside him in the Gallic Wars and stood by his side during times of crisis until his voice echoed in the Senate and his hand dominated the battlefields. But every glory in Rome is incomplete without conspiracy. In 44 BC, Rome trembled under an unforgettable shock. Julius Caesar was assassinated by those he trusted. In the midst of the chaos, Mark Antony stood stunned, yet he did not allow grief to paralyze his mind. He seized the opportunity to emerge as the avenger, delivering a fiery speech that ignited the hearts of the Romans and stirred the masses against Caesar's murderers. In that single moment, he became both the political leader and the spiritual son of the late emperor. But behind the scenes, there was another player, a young man named Octavian, the legal heir of Caesar and power-hungry. Thus began the conflict between two men, one seasoned, the other ambitious, both coveting the title of the master of Rome. Mark Antony was forced to sign a fragile alliance with Octavian and Lepidus, known as the Second Triumvirate. Their apparent goal was to restore the stability of the Republic, but in reality it was a silent struggle for the throne. Mark Antony took control of the East, while Octavian remained in the West, each plotting to overthrow the other. And in this East, there awaited a woman, one who would completely transform the course of his life. In Egypt, Mark Antony met Cleopatra VII, the woman who captivated the hearts of kings and sparked wars for her smile. Their encounter was not ordinary. It marked the beginning of a symphony of love, seduction, and shared interests. He loved her madly, forging both a personal and political alliance with her. They had children, shared dreams, and defied the world together. Yet for her sake, he gradually began to lose something: his prestige in Rome, the support of the people, and the trust of his allies. Octavian did not miss the opportunity. He depicted Mark Antony in Rome as a man who had betrayed his nation for the sake of a foreign woman, rendering him unfit for leadership. Tensions escalated, and the drums of war began to sound. In 31 BC, Antony and his fleet confronted Octavian's alliance in one of the greatest naval battles in history, the Battle of Actium, the battle that marked Antony's final move. Despite the bravery of his soldiers and the strength of his fleet, his ranks were eroded from within by betrayal and desertion. Cleopatra suddenly withdrew her fleet from the battlefield, and Antony followed her in disarray, leaving his soldiers leaderless and his hopes swallowed by the sea. The defeat was catastrophic, and fate had been sealed. Mark Antony returned to Alexandria, where he decided to seek refuge in his final love. But Rome had already made its decision. The advancing force led by Octavian was ruthless. Mark Antony was left with no choice but to flee from disgrace into death. He believed that Cleopatra had died, so he plunged his sword into himself. And when he learned that she was still alive, it was too late. He exhaled his last breath in her arms, in a tragic scene that evokes one of the greatest tragedies. A few days later, Cleopatra joined him, refusing to be captured by Rome, choosing to die as a queen rather than as a war prize. The moral of Mark Antony's story: when the heart becomes a battlefield. Mark Antony's story is not just a chapter in the history of the Roman Empire. It is a mirror in which we witness the struggles of the human soul. A man who reached the pinnacle of glory, led the greatest armies, and was but a hair's breadth away from becoming the master of the world. Yet he fell, not by the sword, but by a heart that loved and a decision that succumbed to passion. In politics, passion is a dagger to reason. Antony was an invincible warrior on the battlefields, yet he was defeated by a woman who made him choose love at the expense of duty. Alliances are not built on trust alone, but on caution. Octavian was once a companion, then became an adversary, and eventually the master of Rome, because Mark Antony misjudged those around him. A true leader is one who knows when to balance the heart and the mind. Antony possessed courage, but he lost wisdom. How many leaders in history have fallen because they failed to know when passion should be silenced and reason should lead? Finally, history does not immortalize broken hearts. It remembers the decisions that made kings and toppled thrones. Mark Antony, he was not defeated on the battlefield, but within himself. He left behind timeless lessons that tell us that glory is not preserved by love alone, nor can it be protected by walls if the soul is fractured.